Hi there. I know I haven't been on here in a while, but I have 2 strikes, and so a third one will get my channel deleted, so I'm just kind of laying low. But I'll do a video now. It's on healing trauma. This should not get a strike. I'm going to cover this on TikTok, but, 3 minutes is limiting, so the most important thing when it comes to healing trauma is that you are willing and you want to do so. I mean, if you're not wanting to make a change and someone's trying to force you, healing trauma is not a simple journey, but it's well worth it. Now, trauma is what happens when individuals have disturbing or depressing experience in life. Abuse, relationship problems, bullying, accidents, car accidents. The list of possible traumas are endless. And the same people can react differently to the same circumstances. So trauma, affects everyone differently. And something that I find traumatizing may not bother you at all. When it comes to talking about trauma with others, the goal is not to make our suffering a competition. It's not that my suffering is worse than yours or anything like that. Everyone just wants to be heard, and we just need to listen with an open mind and not condemn and judge, and just listen. All trauma needs to be dealt with, big or small, whether, so it really just doesn't matter whose trauma is worse and all this stuff, all this competitive, we need to work together instead of compete against each other. And if you haven't had terrible trauma, you should consider yourself lucky. Now, realize that there's nothing wrong with you. No matter how you have dealt with trauma thus far in your life, no matter how distressed you get, there's not anything wrong with you. What's wrong is what has happened to you. And many survivors of trauma feel shame and self-blame for not being able to protect themselves or their loved ones in the face of abuse or violence. And they hold on to this shame, or have debilitating distress long after the traumatic event is over. And keep the shame where it belongs. It's not yours to carry. Our society diagnoses survivors of trauma as mentally ill when it is their social conditions and the horrifying things that happen to people that are the actual disorders. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't need help or you don't have mental health challenges because of trauma, but it's just that there's nothing wrong with you. The cause of your condition does not reside within you. It's something that happened to you. Now, the number one thing that I would recommend for healing trauma would be professional counseling. And most health insurance companies do pay for a certain number of counseling sessions per year. If you cannot afford counseling, there are groups such as Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, any issue that you have, that's actually, those programs are actually quite therapeutic. You can contact local nonprofit agencies. You may be surprised at, things that you can find out there. There are online support groups. There are, and self-help. It's not absolutely necessary to get counseling, okay? It's helpful. I currently do an outpatient drug treatment program that includes counseling, and that's been very helpful. And then I did do therapy. I did 20 sessions a year, and then I ended up going to a rehab for 28 days, and that's when I really started this healing journey, and it took me, a couple years to get through it. And, just one step at a time. Don't have huge expectations, and don't be hard on yourself. And by huge expectations, I mean, don't say, well, I need to have this done by this date. No, just go with it. It's no, that was one part of my changing my mindset is, you know, you can't control certain things, and you have to learn to just go with it. And I would get like really anxious about events before I went to them, like thinking, well, what if this happens and this and this and this? But nothing ever happens how you envision it anyways. So now it's just like, well, I'm going to go in, hope for the best, and just go in with a blank slate. And it's just so much easier. But anyways, okay, so you've got to learn to feel your emotions. When you get triggered, stop and ask yourself, what feeling are you feeling and why? Many times when we examine our emotions, we will find the fear that we have is rooted in trauma. And when I was in this rehab, there was a feelings wheel. It was like a printed piece of paper that had all these feelings on it, and they would make you get out. Because that one of the sayings was, fine isn't a feeling, or okay isn't a feeling. So you need to attach a feeling to it. So, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed, not I'm feeling fine. Stuff like that. And then it's very helpful to learn about common reactions to trauma. Knowing the common reactions to trauma can help you remember that you are having a normal reaction to a traumatic event, so that other people don't make you feel abnormal or broken, or that there's something wrong with you. Understanding what you're going through is essential to reducing the harsh self-judgment that many trauma survivors experience. And that is very helpful. Comprehend that trauma is remembered in the body, which means you're going to have to do more than talk it out to heal. You've got to learn new coping skills. And one of the difficult parts of recovering from trauma is how our brain stores traumatic memories. Survivors not only have to contend with the negative feelings they have internalized about themselves, but they also have to deal with their brains and nervous systems not being able to understand when they're in danger and when they're not. And people who have experienced violence or abuse don't remember traumatic events, they re-experience them. So when you get ready to heal your trauma, it can be very emotionally trying. That's why I don't recommend, you know, it's a journey, and don't have this expectation that it's going to be, you know, over tomorrow. Just learn to let go and go with it. When a traumatic memory surfaces, the parts of the brain linked to emotions and physical functioning are stimulated, causing survivors to feel like the traumatic event is happening in the present rather than like it is something in the past. If the trigger happens in the body, any helpful intervention must also happen there. And there are numerous physical practices that can help rewire the brain to help calm the survival instincts that the brain, you know, the alarms that the brain is sending off. Practices include yoga, dance, breath work, physical exercise, lots of things. Anything that gets you to befriend your body with awareness and calming will help. Meditation's helpful. Identify what makes you feel safe and stable and do more of those things. Trauma takes away one's safety, choice, and control, so the reestablishment of these things is necessary before healing can take place. Now, this is difficult when we live in an insecure world, but you know, it doesn't mean that there is safety to be found in this world. In order to heal, survivors must identify what choices and control that they do have, and what increases your sense of safety, what makes you feel comforted and stable. Make a list of these things and try to practice more of those things. Discover your inner child. Emotional development stops when we experience trauma. We must go back to the time of the trauma and heal the inner child in order to move forward in a positive direction. Tell your story. When it comes to healing trauma, we must actually admit out loud things that we said that we were going to take to the grave. The physical release actually helps heal the trauma. Connect with people. Learn to ask for help. Part of healing trauma is getting comfortable with asking for help and setting boundaries, realizing you have limitations. Humans are not perfect, and asking for help does not make us weak. Trying to suffer these things alone is actually a weaker thing to do. You may benefit from finding people who have had a healing journey of their own. When healing from emotional trauma, it is important to connect with others and keep from isolating yourself. Surround yourself with people who support and respect you. Get daily physical activity. Yoga and other forms of physical activity release endorphins and make you feel safe and more secure. So you really need to engage in in physical activity to create positive feelings, and it helps get the energy moving in your body, things like that. Don't take life too seriously. Learn to let go and go with the flow. It's amazing how little we truly need. Like, I had a period where I lost everything in 2014, and I learned how much stuff was actually unnecessary in my life. This whole reality is an illusion, and a sick one. Nothing is wrong with you if it turns out that you don't like living in an energy harvesting system. I would say that things are actually more right with you, in fact. Work on increasing self-forgiveness, acceptance, and love. Recognize that you are a good person, but you have been programmed, hurt, and affected by the actions of others. Really get down to the inner child of who you were before this world made you bitter, and forgive yourself. We must learn to accept our choices and realize that they got us to exactly where we are today, and all we have is the eternal now, and to move forward in a positive direction. Practice meditation and mindfulness. Learning meditation and to be mindful of the environment around you, including the behaviors and potential trauma responses of those you interact with, is helpful. Meditation is not a process of shutting down all your thoughts, and that's a myth that I've heard so many times. Meditation is a process of learning to slow the thoughts. But if you have a thought during meditation, you let it have its moment, and then you focus back on your breath, whatever it is you're focusing on. Oops, I've lost my spot. Okay. And you can meditate. You don't have to be silent while meditating. You can meditate while being creative or while dancing or something like that. Use relaxation techniques. Find a hobby. Developing coping skills is an important part of healing trauma and dealing with future traumatic events so that we don't revert back to old behaviors. Yoga, arts and crafts, cooking, time in nature, collecting crystals, and anything that brings you joy. Do add more of that into your life. Makes you feel young, carefree. Positive affirmations. The brain gets into negative feedback loops, and this includes negative thinking. In order to switch your mindset from a negative to a more positive one, repeating positive affirmations helps. Start your day out or end your day with positive affirmations. And there are good guided meditations and books on YouTube. Guided meditations is also a good way to learn how to meditate, and then eventually you can do it without the guide. It helps you more understand what meditation is. That's how I started. Now I don't really use guided meditations. Sometimes, but it's rare, maybe once or twice a month, I don't know. But I meditate daily. Okay. When you catch yourself thinking something negative, make a conscious effort to switch it to a positive thought and get that thought out of your head. And you can focus on your breath, start singing a song, whatever it is, something to push that thought out of your head. And then over time, the brain it goes to positive thinking over negative. And then positive thoughts really do attract more positive circumstances. Our thoughts create our reality. So the better you think, the better the external reflects back to you. Journaling. Writing down your feelings or things you're afraid to say out loud is a good way to get to know yourself. Writing is cathartic for many, and reading back what you wrote may help you see things in a new perspective. At the very least, it will release some energy. Examine your behaviors and decide what behaviors you want to change, and then make a concentrated effort to make the change. But don't put a ton of pressure on yourself. Only, make one or two changes at a time. Don't try to change everything at once. Don't have expectations for how this journey is going to be or how things are going to go ahead of time. Just let go and go with the flow. Reconnect with the intuition and follow it. Follow what you are drawn to do, and the right doors will open up for you. Anything that you have a strong gut feeling about or a feeling that you cannot shake, investigate that very thing. Daily grounding. The human body is designed to exchange negative and positive ions with the earth through the soles of our feet, and shoes keep many of us from doing this. Walk barefoot on the earth for at least 15 minutes a day, weather permitting, and this process is called grounding, and it has many health benefits. Reducing inflammation is one. Technology creates an abundance of positive ions, and an imbalance of any kind in the body can cause problems. Grounding is more important than ever for humanity right now with all this tech. And then strengthening the connection to your intuition and listening to it. The intuition is your gut and heart feelings. Your intuition cannot lie to you, and that's why when we ignore it, we often regret it. The more you use your intuition, the stronger and louder it gets. One intention of mind control programming is to disconnect our minds from our heart and gut connection. And strengthening this connection is very helpful for healing and honestly in all aspects of life. So I hope this video is helpful for anyone trying to figure out how to start healing trauma. Those are things that I did and have been very helpful. So I will be back on YouTube in August. Have a great day.